In Springfield and Washington County, Kentucky, as in most communities, citizens come together each year to celebrate important chapters from their past. Old and young, they gather to remember their founding, to relive a bit of everyday life from a bygone era. They learn the tasks that had to be done, and they hear once again the stories of how it all began, of how settlers eager to claim the rich farmland would settle, build a home, and start a family. But in Springfield and Washington County, Kentucky, a very different pioneer story is told. The story of a covenant between two families, the Lincolns and the Hanks, a bond that would lay the foundation for a legacy that would change the course of Kentucky, of America, and world history forever. As the city and nation grew, part of that history would be lost, seemingly forever. This is a story of how a community reclaimed its history. A simple story of a simple marriage, a simple beginning in Springfield and Washington County, Kentucky, where the Abraham Lincoln legacy began. The year was 1806. The Revolutionary War was long forgotten, and Indian skirmishes were giving way to the laying out of farms and building towns. And in Kentucky, settlers were seeking to improve their fortunes, among them the Lincolns and the Hanks. Frontier life was hard and often full of great insecurity and danger. But these settlers were hungry for opportunity and dreamed of the future, their own, of Kentucky's, and of a newly formed nation. The wedding vows between Thomas and Nancy began with a promise. It was a familiar scene on the Kentucky frontier, a joyous event with lots of food, music, and dancing. As the custom, the Methodist preacher Reverend Jesse Head pronounced Thomas Lincoln and Nancy Hanks husband and wife on June 12, 1806. On June 10, 2 days prior, Thomas Lincoln and Nancy's guardian, Richard Berry, signed the marriage license, noting their intent to have a marriage shortly between Thomas Lincoln and Nancy Hanks. Thomas executed a bond pledging a 50-pound forfeiture to the state should he fail to carry out the wedding. On February 10, 1807, Thomas and Nancy became the proud parents of Sarah. On February 12, 1809, a son, Abraham, was born in Hardin County, now LaRue County, Kentucky. Thomas Jr. died in infancy. Thomas and Nancy moved their family to Indiana in 1816. Nancy Hanks died in 1818. But Abraham Lincoln always held fondly to his Kentucky roots and to his mother. "God bless my mother," he once said. "Everything I am or hope to be, I owe to my angel mother."
I was born in Hardin County, Kentucky. My parents were born in Virginia of undistinguished families. I was raised to farm work. I was a clerk in a store, a captain in the Army, and a postmaster. I was elected to the legislature, studied law, and practiced law in Springfield, Illinois.
Abraham Lincoln was the 16th President of the United States. He steered the country through the worst period in U.S. history, the Civil War. He wrote the Emancipation Proclamation and led the Union to win the Civil War, the eventual death knell to slavery that freed 4 million Americans from bondage. Lincoln was assassinated at Ford's Theater on Good Friday, April 14, 1865, in Washington, D.C., while watching the play Our American Cousin. His assassin, John Wilkes Booth, was a Confederate sympathizer who denounced Lincoln and his administration. Lincoln died without ever finding his parents' marriage bond. His search for the wedding certificate in Hardin County in 1858 ended in disappointment. After Lincoln's untimely death, his former law partner and self-designated biographer William Herndon began a new search for the Lincoln-Hanks marriage bond. Herndon looked in Hardin County, not Washington County, and when he failed to find the document, made the erroneous assumption Abraham Lincoln's parents had never been married. The marriage bond was found in 1878, exactly where it had been filed by the Washington County clerk, along with the marriage return by the Reverend Jesse Head, proof that he had indeed performed the wedding ceremony. We know that Thomas Lincoln was an accomplished cabinet maker and builder as well as a farmer, a civic-minded individual, a landowner, and excellent businessman. And furniture made by Thomas Lincoln is highly collected and can be found in museums throughout Kentucky and the nation. Nancy Hanks was uneducated by today's standards, but was a loving woman and a devout Christian. She taught young Abraham Bible verses and lyrics from hymns. He was greatly influenced by her. I remember my mother's prayers, and they've always followed me, Abraham Lincoln said. They have clung to me all my life. Mordecai Lincoln, Thomas Lincoln's brother, remained in Washington County for many years after Thomas and Nancy Lincoln moved further west. Mordecai's house is still standing in Washington County. Lincoln Homestead State Park sits on land once owned by the Lincoln family. The people of Springfield, Kentucky, continue to celebrate the story of this sacred union, a bond that changed the course of history forever. A statue of Abraham Lincoln, the son of Nancy Hanks and Thomas Lincoln, stands opposite the courthouse that housed his parents' marriage bond. Not lost after all, but unnoticed for half a century.